Hello, everyone. I'm Vern Davis. I am your host of Plant Profits, and Plant Profits is brought to you by Produce Global. Hey, I'm excited today. I have some good friends and folks that I know that you and the audience will love to hear about. They have interesting individual life stories, and they're creating a beautiful story together. So I think that is quite wonderful. My guest today on Plant Profits, I have Mr. Josh Wong, who is president of RGB Cannabis, and Mr. Steve Colborne, who is the chief operating officer of RGB Cannabis. And hello, guys. How you doing?
Hi, Vern. Thanks for having us.
Oh man, I'm so excited to have you here. It's great. And hey, my guests here are in Canada. They live in Canada. They were raised in Canada, and they're Canadians. And so we're going to get a chance to talk about Canada. I find Canada is a neighboring country, but I find it such an interesting place. I love going to Canada. And sometimes I feel like when I go to Canada, I'm so much further away than what I really am. And that's kind of cool. Now, I know, Josh, you went to school in Calgary, right? Did you grow up in Calgary?
Yep. Born and raised Calgarian.
Calgarian? I like that. Calgarian. It sounds like something that came off Star Trek, Calgarian. But
could be. It's close. It's that far away. So
when I think of Calgary, man, I think of rodeo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Greatest outdoor show on earth.
Yeah. Now, see, I'm from Texas, so I understand that.
Sure.
That horse and cow thing. I get that. Going to big rodeos in Houston, Texas, and going to trail rides and parades in Fort Worth. You just part of you. And
yeah, you're part. Both Steve and I could probably tack and saddle our own horses, and we're not really horsemen, But it's just because you grow up around it, right? You have friends who have animals, and I love horses, though. I have to say, I like riding horses and stuff. And we are the mini Texas, or whatever you want to call it. We have a lot of rodeos, and we have a lot of small town rodeos too, which is what people.
Which is really fun too. The small town
rodeos are
because it's so important to the town.
Yeah, totally.
It's so important to the town and the people, and they get into it, and everybody's got some boots on. Everybody's got a hat. It's crazy. It's kind of cool. Now, you went to the University of Calgary, and you went to film school. We're gonna get into that, but man, tell me just a little bit about your nucleus that you grew up around. Your team, your folks, your family. Give us a little bit about that. Yeah.
My crew. Well, growing up, I was a bit of a Brady Bunch family. So
okay.
My mother had 4 daughters when my dad met her and fell in love with her. And my dad was an angel from heaven. That man, I think anyone who ever met him would always say that he was one of the kindest, most giving humans they'd ever met. So he just decided to take that all on. At the time I thought, you look back and you think, taking on a kid or two is one thing, but four kids that aren't your own, and they were near teenagers at that time, or some of them were full on teenagers. And so I think that was quite a challenge. And then they had me. So I say, like, I'm a bit blessed. I had 5 mothers.
Literally.
I literally have 5 mothers.
Yeah.
Like, I have 4 women telling me what to do pretty much all the time, other than my wife,
Yeah.
So it was a funny time growing up, because I got a lot of love, though.
Yeah.
So as much to my wife's chagrin, she feels like I was indulged in how much I was loved.
Yeah. And it's nothing you can do about it. It's just the nature of things, man. But I tell you what, kudos to your wife for marrying you, knowing that she's got to deal with all these women, right? That loves this only son. She had to stay up a couple nights thinking about that.
5 mother-in-laws. Think about it. 5 mother-in-laws.
Exactly.
All thinking the same thing. What is he getting what he wants? And
exactly. Exactly. And Steve, same with you. You guys grew up. Did you know each other at a young age, or did that come later?
No, Josh and I only met a couple of years ago, but because we
Yeah.
both come from Calgary, and Calgary is a small community when you actually start looking into it. And he knew
Yeah.
my cousins, and like it was a crazy connection once we started diving in. And it was pretty easy to do some due diligence on him and ask my cousin, what's up with this Josh Wong guy? He seems really smart. He's like, oh, he's a good guy. So kind of just blossomed from there. Was our love for cannabis has brought us together, and it was an amazing. It was literally like a year and a half. I think we've known each other, but
that
it
is
feels
crazy.
like a long time.
That is, you guys' relationship is almost as young as COVID.
It was. It started at COVID. We might have started it with us connecting. Who knows? Keep us apart.
Now, I got to ask you, Steve Colborne, what the hell is geomatic engineering? What is that? I mean, who goes to school for that?
Well, people that grow up in Calgary, man. So oil and gas is huge here, obviously. So my parents or my dad was in oil and gas. He's what you call a land agent. So he goes and negotiates with the landowner on behalf of the oil company to access their land. So
he screws those guys. He screws those guys.
He tries to not. He was actually quite loved because he'd bring checks to them, right? He'd bring the $250,000 checks. So
okay, all right.
The geomatics engineering is like the surveying of it. So making plans, and there's data collecting at the end of the day. But it really set me out good for doing this kind of job because of how we're able to like pull information, right? Like everything's information driven, and we collect it now. And we have a very interesting way of running our company using digital data.
No, that's cool. And I want to, maybe we get a chance to get into some depth on that. Now, Josh, you went to film school. So what was happening in your life with those 25 women that raised you? No, 5, but that really attracted you, that you wanted to put your thoughts on the screen, and you actually thought we would like it.
Well, I mean, the real story is that I never wanted to be a filmmaker.
Okay.
It was never an ambition of mine. It was never something I wanted to do. I was a musician. I played in bands. I sang in bands. I still have a band that's charting in Billboard. Like I'm a rock singer, and I've been a rock singer for 30 years almost, since I was a teenager. Wow. I just really like being in bands. Yeah. But that's not a very good job, especially if you don't sell any records. So so I just took a job working as a PA in production, and I started to move my way up. And really what happened is, after I got into the camera department, people started to realize I had talent. Okay.
Oh, you mean behind the scenes?
Yeah.
Behind the scenes. Looking through a lens.
Yeah. I had special ability or whatever it was. I had talent, behind the lens. So I got to start being in the camera department, and that's where it really started to take off. And how I became a director is I was a director of photography. I was of some repute, shooting stuff, basically the head camera guy. Okay. And the director didn't show.
Oh, just missed the director. Just missed the meeting.
There was a shoot. We were supposed to be shooting this live concert, and he didn't show up. So the producer just goes, "You're directing," and I was like, "Oh fuck," excuse my language. I don't know. That's all right. That was really one of the OF moments of my life, because I had no ambition to be a director. It was just a job. But I've only heard, the only person I've ever heard the similar thing is a race car driver, an F1 guy. I can't even remember who it was, but once they let you behind the wheel, you do not want to let go of that control. It is an interesting thing, that power, and it's not power so much as is it now I get to decide what the creative is.
And that happened to you? You felt that?
Yeah.
The first day? I fell in love. I
felt addicted. Yeah. The first moment I was in that seat, I was like, whoa, this is for me. I don't want to ever touch that camera again, kind of thing. Like, it was, now I'm in the seat. Now I can drive. Wow. And what I realized was I was actually much better driver than I was a cameraman. I'm a much, much better director than I was. Being a director is a lot in what goes on in here, right? Being able to put the movie together in different orders in your mind and shuffle things around, shuffle scenes around, much like we do in nonlinear editing now with the computer. But if you're able to do that in your mind on set, those are the most powerful filmmakers, right? So I'm like at the highest
That makes
kind of
sense.
level
Yeah.
in Canada at that now. Just,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still always making usually one project every few years. So right now I'm working on a drama Western, and I actually, I teased you a clip of it. So I don't want to
Yeah,
talk about it.
that is, well, I mean, you gotta give us just a little bit so that the audience can look out for it. What's intriguing about the story that should get our attention?
Yeah, so this is a very famous Calgarian and Albertan. I'm making it's not a biopic because it's a drama, and I made it up. Basically, I got a writer together and I took the historical stories, because there's no real accurate stories of this man's life.
Right.
But many historians have written books about what they think, pieced together all of the facts they have, and tried to recreate his life. So I was super identified with this character because he happened to be African Canadian, right? And he was a slave that was from Texas, and he made his way up to Canada and became like a really famous rancher in the 1900s, in the early 1900s in Canada. So when I found out about this character, I became completely obsessed. Like as a teenager, like I was probably 13. And what happened was I just loved the story, kept researching it. And later on in my directorial career, a writer came to me and said, I have a script about this character. And I was just like, that was it. I have never worked on a thing since. That's 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I have not shot a commercial. I am just totally obsessed with that film.
Well,
I will die like, or make it. Like,
okay, so
in my lifetime, right?
I love that story for so many reasons that you can imagine. But when will we get a chance to see it?
I mean, that's up to the.
I know that's the question, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we will make the film probably within the next 24 months.
Okay.
So it'll come out within the next couple of years, and I think it'll be like you already know, is my goal is that kids in Compton are wearing cowboy hats for Halloween that year. Like that's what I want to see. I want to see the real Black Panther out there in the world. Like the guy who changed my life personally. Like in my take a look at me. You think I ever got to be a cowboy? Like I was always the Indian. Okay? Like there was no. I never got to be the cowboy. I never got to be the lead.
Yeah.
I never got to be, unless it was a kung fu movie and that was dubbed.
Yeah.
Nobody like me was ever the lead character in any movie I ever watched. So
no, that's crazy. Look, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dive into more cannabis talk and background talk with you guys. I'm looking forward to it. Well, look, I really love that story, and I know that there's some other things we can talk about that's going to actually help RGB with this. And Steve, your story is coming because I really want people to understand why you're in cannabis.
Sure.
I think it's very, very cool. Hey, I'm Vern Davis. I'm your host of Plant Profits. Plant Profits is fueled by Produce Global, and I'm having a great discussion today with Mr. Josh Wong and Mr. Steve Colborne of RGB Cannabis. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. I'm Vern Davis. I'm your host of Plant Profits, and Plant Profits is fueled by Produce Global. And my guests today are all of RGB Cannabis, Mr. Josh Wong, who's the president, Mr. Steve Colborne, who is the chief operating officer of RGB Cannabis. And both of these gentlemen have come into the cannabis. Cannabis has come into their lives in their own way, and it's become an extremely important part, and that's why we're having this conversation. Steve, you got an interesting story. I mean, it's a personal wellness story. I'd love for people to understand how cannabis became part of who you are and the fabric of your life.
For sure, yeah. So I grew up with a mother that was really into homeopathic medicine. So we rarely would go to doctors. It was always put lavender under your pillow or rub some eucalyptus on you or anything along that. So that kind of set up my life for cannabis because I really had a love for plants. But when I turned 20, between 20 and 21, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is a pretty crazy gut issue with your large intestine and colon. And I was given lots of different drugs from the doctors to try and manage pain for a good 4 weeks. I lost 40 pounds and got super sick and just pretty much withering away in front of my parents. So They actually ended up giving me a joint. The first time I smoked weed, my parents handed me a joint in their living room and I was 20. So it was pretty crazy because like I never really thought of using cannabis or alcohol in my earlier life because I lived out in the country. So I was always driving and
Yeah,
didn't
but
really
man,
dive
I'm
into it.
thinking, where the hell did mom and dad get this joint? And they've been doing, didn't tell me about.
Oh, for sure they are. And like we were always quite honest. My parents were like, you guys can smoke weed, but wait till you're older and your brain's done growing. Cause like the earlier you smoke weed, the quicker your brain's gonna stop developing. So I was handed it when I was 21. And so I'm 37 now, but for about so I've given me that first joint, made me sleep through the night. I pretty much used cannabis since that day. And that was 15 years ago. So obviously you weren't buying stuff by the strain name, right? It was just the bag of weed. So once in a while, I discovered that the cannabis did not help me at all. It made me sicker. I was like, what's going on? Like, so I started really researching cannabis and like figuring out what was in cannabis. It wasn't just weed, right? So I discovered trichomes, THC, CBD, and eventually all these minor cannabinoids that in my heart, I was just like, man, these are the things that are probably actually helping me are these minor cannabinoids. So I dove in hard and started extraction, learned about it, how to separate those necessary pieces of the plant from the actual plant. So washing those trichomes off the plant and figuring out what was actually in there. So I was able to keep a pretty good medical journal for about 6 years with my gastroenterologist because again, like everyone was against weed, man. Like they were 100% against it. And I've actually been able to bring him over to the dark side, or now it's the green side, right?
It's the green
like,
side, yeah.
It's pretty crazy because for the last 3 years, every 6 months, I go and talk to him. I'm healthy. I don't have any pharmaceutical drugs in my body. And yeah, we just discussed my cannabis use and kind of how it helps me through my day to day. I had my large intestine and colon removed about 5 years ago because of just other complications with drugs they were trying to give me. Because again, like ulcerative colitis is kind of a newer disease, let's call it, what's being treated. So they treat it with lots of random stuff and like it caused pretty weird side effects for me and everyone else that's taking it. So I was really interested in trying to find something that didn't create these side effects. And eventually, through all of my guinea pigging on myself, I found that the minor cannabinoid CBG actually really helped my life. And that doesn't get you stoned, right? That became my problem is I couldn't be smoking a joint at 7 a.m. and then going to draft survey plans for oil and gas, right? So I needed something where I was like still kind of focused and like not wanting to go veggie and play video games, right? So that was pretty much how I got introduced to weed and then met Josh, and like our synergies just completely connected from two different avenues of cannabis and but both loving it, right? So it proved that like you didn't have to be a stoner to love weed.
No, that's great. And Josh, you've been in it longer than him, and you came by it a little different way, but the passion came about. Why don't you share a little bit of that?
Yeah, I'm slightly older than Steve.
Doesn't look it though.
No, he doesn't.
But I'm a rec user, but I lived in Vancouver. So I came a lot of it for me was being an 18-year-old, living in Vancouver on the West Coast, sort of the center of the universe for cannabis use especially at that time in the world. Maybe we used to call it Vansterdam, the laws were getting even, you could literally, the police would come and go put it out or whatever. And that was when people were getting beat down in LA and stuff for getting caught with weed and stuff. So, this was an interesting time and an interesting place to be. And what I learned about was the activism, the hemp side, the fact that, cannabis was held back because of industry. And that's what a lot of people really didn't understand. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners understand now though, but cannabis was outlawed because of the forestry industry. Like that's just the facts. Those are the facts. So the fact that we still aren't making industrial hemp products, we're still not making industrial hemp rope. We're still not, like, all clothes should be made with hemp. Like everything should be made with hemp, really. But the cotton industry, there's a lot of things that will suffer, a lot of billionaires, frankly, that will lose a market share. So not unlike the electric car or whatever you want to call it, it's been suppressed. Cannabis has been completely suppressed. So that was what I was awakened to that in the early 90s.
Okay.
So for me, it was a massive black mark. Like my father was a conservative Chinese guy. So this was like a very contentious time in my life between 25 and 35, say, where I was sort of one of the people really fighting the good fights. Like a lot of the people stand on the shoulders of greatness, because I was the type of person that when I moved back to Calgary, I would smoke joints in public and just say, do you think I'm doing something wrong? And the answer was always no. Like at first a person would confront me and go, hey, you can't do that here.
Right.
And I
just
would
from
say,
a legal,
why?
just from a legal social order perspective.
Yeah. And you know, I've been breaking down stigma forever, saying, do you want somebody drinking whiskey back here? Or would you prefer me being polite to your like, you know, and I just started to convince people that, you know, cannabis is and cannabis people and are very usually really good people. Like people that want to use cannabis on a regular basis are chill people. Like it's a stereotype that's there for a reason, right? Not everyone who smokes cannabis is a good person. That's ridiculous, right? But I think that people who reach out for that type of lifestyle usually don't have a lot of malintent. So, you know, as opposed to, you know, I've talked to many police officers through my filmmaking about alcohol and cannabis. I started making a film about cannabis, and that was really how I got into it. And a lot of those officers would tell me, you know, we go to a domestic violence and there's a bottle of vodka or whiskey. Like always, like not sort of, like it's always there. So they get drunk and they beat each other. But if we go in and people are smoking weed, they're eating potato chips. Like, you know, they're not fighting. So, you know, it's just the cops knew too, right? Like everybody knows. Everybody knows.
Everybody knows.
So there was no point in hiding it anymore. And so I started to be a proponent. And as a musician and as a filmmaker, people knew I was a pothead.
Yeah.
That guy's the pot guy. If you want to smoke pot, go ask him. He'll figure it out for you. He'll help you find somebody. And I met a guy who owned a clinic in town, and that was in 2016. And he was fascinating. So I started making a movie about him, and then he roped me into helping the company. And that company now has 24 stores, and I don't work with them anymore. But I ended up starting my own brand because I saw the opportunity. And when I met Steve, that was when I was no longer a pretender. Like, you know, I'm a highest level of sommelier certification at this point. But when I first met Steve, I was like, I don't know, man, what do you think? And he's like, dude, you're brilliant. And Steve gave me the push to
get it done.
To get it done.
So let's talk about that. And you just said something. You guys are sommeliers in cannabis. And how many of those folks exist? I mean, certified, knowledge is verified. How many of those folks exist?
I mean, we'd have to ask CannaReps. They certify people every year. So like, I think once a quarter, I don't know with COVID what's happening, but CannaReps, and I will plug them fully. Adolfo is a guy who's from Argentina, I believe, originally. And he lives in Vancouver. And what he did was he studied all over the world, the land races. And like he went hard, and then what he did was he broke it down into curriculum. So he was like kind of the first guy that I know of. There's the Trichome Institute in where's that, in Colorado, Steve? Yeah. So that was so they formalized like cannabis education. But what Adolfo did is he devised a way to, like, he had studied wine quite extensively.
And wine has terroir, and this has the same effect on cannabis.
Exactly, right.
Yes.
So that's why he built a sommelier course basically around what wine people in France and Italy were doing for sommeliers in other parts of the world for cannabis. And it is an intense program, let me tell you. It isn't that long, but the fact that like at the final exam was you get a half an hour to take notes on 16 different strains in glass jars, and you get to know what they are. So you make notes. Then you go for lunch, you come back, and you have to identify all the strains just by look and smell. So, I mean, but later on, when you realize when I had to buy $250,000 worth of cannabis without ever trying it, it seemed pretty useful at that moment. You were like, okay, this training is important.
Oh man, I bet you did. And what I really want to talk about is you guys came about your knowledge and your intensity of knowledge of the plant in different ways, but now you're together. What power does that create in this RGB business that really is a separator for you guys and your brand?
Us being passionate, really, right? Like when we walk into shops, like the bud tenders, just like you can tell if they're having a bad day. We chat with them about like cannabis, minor cannabinoids, flavonoids, terpenes. Their minds are blown, right? Because again, it's been held back information for so long, and Josh and I were just diving in at every part we possibly could. That people look to us as like cannabis experts, really, and ask us some pretty crazy questions about weed, and we usually know the answer for them. It just creates a great synergy between Josh and I, because he's just so rec and I'm so medical, that they're like, wow, these guys got like literally both sides of the world right here, and can really pretty much, we believe them, right? Like that's the biggest thing in cannabis industry is transparency. And we just push forward exactly our love for it. And it's very hard to deny like love for cannabis between us when we talk. So it's a very like emotional thing for a lot of people, I believe.
Yeah, and like in Canada, we have a real sort of line in the sand with licensed producers here. You know, in America, it's actually more developed in a sense. There's lots of middle grade, middle tier. You know, there's sort of people that are trying to do things that are innovative. In Canada, we have like kind of this divide. We have many large like publicly traded company sort of trying to grind and just drive the price of the gram down, and really not trying to make anything other than products for market. And then you have the micro cultivator, who is the guy who's from the legacy market, who's been growing for 35 years, who can only grow 20 kilos like every cycle, whatever cycle he's on. And these guys are just passionate, love of the plant, and and they're getting blocked out. So what we did was we created a company where we could do that. Like we could take a small batch grower and get the product to the people, so that people don't have to buy from the large producers.
I love that, Josh. And that's what we're going to talk about after this break. I'm Vern Davis. I'm the host of Plant Profits. And my guests today are the gentlemen who have created this business called RGB Cannabis. And that's Mr. Josh Wong, who's the president, Mr. Steve Colborne, who's the chief operating officer. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. I'm Vern Davis. I am your host of Plant Profits. And Plant Profits is brought to you and fueled by Protus Global. And I am with Mr. Josh Wong and Mr. Steve Colborne of RGB Cannabis. And Josh, you were really right before the break, really starting to embark on something that I think is very interesting for us all to know. Please go ahead.
Well, as a company, one of our mandates was to try to bring, part of what was on the legacy to the market. And what I was explaining is a lot of the micro cultivators who are the originators, essentially the giants on which the shoulders we stand.
Absolutely.
These people are getting blocked out of the industry, partly because of still stigma, but also because large business and big alcohol, big tobacco have now come in and started taking over some of these cannabis companies, and they're really just about profit margin. And so, RGB was an opportunity for us not only to hold true to the people and the reasons why we got into the business, but we realized there's an opportunity, a real opportunity, because we know that the customers are actually going to drive sales. So
absolutely. Now, you guys with RGB have created this highly curated products, and now, have you found that you have been the outlet, or have you partnered with these smaller curated growers, highly educated and passionate, and been doing it before it was legal? And you've helping them bring through your vehicle product to market. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, we currently, like, we've helped already 2 different micro cultivators, and we have 3 more online now. So we can't help everybody because we just frankly can't afford it. But that's what I said about, if you're in Canada and you're buying RGB, you're supporting literally the growth of the industry, the true industry, the true legacy products, the true individuals who are going to bring you the best stuff that you're going to want. And, we have very, very lovely factories, and we have good partners, and we've done sort of the business side so that the micro cultivators, who are frankly, some of them incredible farmers, but I don't know if you've ever met farmers, but some of them just know farming.
Yeah.
So
I
the
have.
marketing and business side is not, it doesn't resonate with them. So it's really, really, really hard for them to get their own stuff out there, right? They need people like us to approve the quality and get it to market. And so that's part of what we do. And what we did was we got a really great anchor, and we actually got our fingers and got our hands a little bit dirty within our own grow to get things up to the quality that it should be. So right now we help basically our licensed producer become one of the best producers in the country, especially for the quality. We might not be one of the biggest shots, but we certainly are we are getting a massive buzz across the nation right now for having some of the best quality.
That is amazing. Now this is all about affecting the lives of Canadians with the plant, and in a very, very positive way. Now, how will and how can folks here in the U.S. feel that same love from you guys? How does that work?
Well, fortunately, my let's go back to my family tree here again. We didn't refer to it at the beginning, but my mother was married to I guess the Don here. My mother was married to Stan Chong, who is Tommy Chong's brother.
Yeah.
So my brother, who's my brother-in-law, who's married to my sister, one of my mothers, one of my mothers is actually Tommy Chong's niece. So my brother-in-law is he runs a lot of the stuff here for Tommy Chong's Cannabis in the US. So everything we do at RGB is basically built upon that. I mean, like, a lot of the philosophy and everything I learned from Tommy. I learned all the activism from Tommy. I learned how to curate products. I learned a lot of stuff from Steve and Adolfo and Dr. Ife Abiola and Dr. Igor Kravchuk. Like, I kind of went with it. Yeah. I had an opportunity, so I leveled up, let's just say. But Tommy Chong's Cannabis is available in every state. So if you're looking you can always count on great products. That's all we do. We never put anything with that logo on it that has a substandard product in it. Like, it's nationwide. You can go to any state that has a medical or recreational cannabis. You can find a Tommy Chong Cannabis product, and you usually be pretty happy with it.
Oh, that's great. No, and that's a cool connection. Steve, is there anything, we're coming to the end, and I just wanted to make sure that, is there anything that we missed that you believe that the audience need to know that we didn't touch on?
I don't know. I don't think so. I know that Josh and I are always going to be trying to bring innovative products to the market and looking at the legacy market and seeing what was there. And instead of just jamming more dry flower into containers, like, actually make kind of interesting products that people are interested to have. Because again, like, not everyone likes smoking cannabis, right? So there's lots of rules in Canada that kind of need to change a little bit, because the lawmakers obviously didn't realize what they were doing when they created some of these laws. Like, right now, you can only buy 5 drinks at a dispensary that are max 10 milligrams each. So there's lots of goofy rules and laws that need to be kind of massaged before you can really innovative products. But we're excited to bring those products to market in Canada.
No, that's amazing, Steve. Thank you. And really, really appreciate that. And Josh, man, thanks again for you two guys, and for you to come on the show and have this chat with us. And there's a lot more that we didn't talk about. Here's what I love. I love the fact that you guys got together and you created something bigger than yourselves. That's really, really important. And your concern is making sure that when I I consume, that I have the opportunity to consume the very best and the highest quality and the cleanest product and the best for me. And that to me is what brand is all about, where you can depend on it on a daily basis, or however, whenever you choose to make that use. And I really, really appreciate what you guys are doing from a quality and from an intelligence perspective in the industry. And I want to thank you for joining us. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. You can download episodes of Plant Profits by going to cannabisradio.com and to anywhere you get your podcast fix, man. Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, wherever. And I want you to really take note and look for this particular episode of Plant Profits with Josh Wong, President, and Steve Colborne, Chief Operating Officer of RGB Cannabis. And then I want you to check out Produce Global, my company. Man, go and take a look at us. And we're on all of the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Anywhere you can find us there, and you can really understand how we are changing people's lives, how we're building companies. And that's protisglobal.com, PROTIS global.com. Please, everyone, have a great day, enjoy life, and cheers.